Today we're continuing. We're going to complete the 7th chapter of the 10th canto. Krishna has just come back from his sky ride on Trinavarta. Trinavarta has been smashed onto a stone slab, and now we're hearing the 31st sloka, the purport of 7th chapter.
Rakshishyati iti vishvasaha Hari Bhakti Vilas 11.676. One of the processes of surrender is that one should simply depend on Krishna, convinced that he will give one all protection. That Krishna will protect his devotee is a fact, and Nanda Maharaj and the other inhabitants of Vrindavan accepted this very simply, although they did not know that the Supreme Lord himself was present before them. There have been many instances in which a devotee like Prahlad Maharaj or Dhruva Maharaj has been put in difficulty even by his father, but has been saved under all circumstances. Therefore, our only business is to become Krishna conscious and depend fully on Krishna for all protection. This is from purport of Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.31.
So now that they have retrieved Krishna from the chest of Trinavarta, and Mother Yashoda has taken him and fed him her milk, now Nanda Maharaj and the other Brijbasis, they're reflecting how now it's been 3 times that Krishna has been saved from very dangerous situation. First Putana, then Shakatasura, now Trinavarta. And the Brijbasis, this is in Brihadvan. Now Brihadvan, this was the residence of Nanda Maharaj's father, Parjanya Maharaj. Parjanya Maharaj, originally, his father was Devamidha, who had 2 wives, and from his Vaishya wife, when there's a mixture of the 2, the Kshatriya and the Vaishya, so whatever the caste is of the mother, the son takes that. So Parjanya Maharaj, he was very pious and always worshipped the Supreme Lord. And his 5 sons, the middle son being Nanda, took all the qualities also of his father, as being so pious, with complete faith in the Supreme Lord. So now with Krishna as Nanda and Yashoda's son, they don't see Krishna as the Supreme Lord at all. They see no connection whatsoever. If anything, he might be a great demigod, or but in any case, at every instance, Nanda and Yashoda and all the cowherd men and cowherd women are taking shelter of the Supreme Lord and praying for his protection.
Nanda Maharaj and others said, we must previously have performed austerities for a very long time, worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, performed pious activities for public life, constructing public roads and wells, and also given charity, as a result of which this boy, although faced with death, has returned to give happiness to his relatives. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.32.
It's not merely by performing pious activities that one can be happy. We have the example later in the Srimad Bhagavatam of Maharaj Nriga. Maharaj Nriga was the younger brother of Ikshvaku. Very high birth. Both were the sons of Vaivasvata Manu. And Maharaj Ikshvaku, he donated so many cows to the Brahmins and gave so much in charity. You couldn't even count how many cows that he gave. But because of one small mistake, for 1,000 years he had to take birth as a lizard. Now the Brijbasis, after Nanda Maharaj was appointed to be the king of Braja, actually Parjanya Maharaj, he asked the eldest son, Upananda, to become the king. And he told Upananda to call Vasudev, call Gargamuni, call all of the cowherd men and women, and I want to appoint you now as the king. So when this big ceremony took place, Upananda insisted that Nanda Maharaj be the king because of his so many wonderful qualities in Nanda Maharaj. And at that time the demigods, they showered flowers, and from the sky they could hear Jai Jai. So then all the residents of Vrindavan also chanted Jai Jai, and Nanda Maharaj became the king. But then when he married Yashoda, they were growing older and older, and there was no child. So being the king, all of the residents of Vrindavan, they wanted the king to have a son. So not only did Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj perform so many pious activities and so many yagyas, but all of the inhabitants of Vrindavan also, on their behalf, performed yagyas and pious activities so that Nanda and Yashoda could have a son. So when the king is righteous and performs many great charitable activities and yagyas, so that people also follow in his footsteps. And that's exactly the type of king that Nanda Maharaj was.
Nanda Maharaj confirmed that by pious activities one can become a sadhu, so that one will be happy at home and one's children will be protected. In Shastra there are many injunctions for karmis and jnanis, especially for karmis, by which they can become pious and happy even in material life. According to Vedic civilization, one should perform activities for the benefit of the public, such as constructing public roads, planting trees on the both sides of the road so that people can walk in the shade, and constructing public wells so that everyone can take water without difficulty. Purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.32.
So for the karmis, these pious activities are being performed by them so that they can get pious credits, so they can be elevated in life to higher planets and enjoy material life with their families. But for the devotees, they're performing these pious activities simply to please the Supreme Lord and the Lord's devotees. So Nanda Maharaj, being a pure devotee of the Lord, he wanted to perform many pious activities, give charity, simply for the protection of his son Krishna, and so that all the residents of Vrindavan could live very happily together. Everyone was attracted to Krishna. After all, the residents of Vrindavan also performed so much tapasya and yagya and charity so that Nanda Maharaj would have this beautiful son Krishna. They were all so much in love with him that even at the time of his birth, when they heard that Yashoda had a little baby boy, they dressed themselves beautifully because they wanted to come for darshan of this boy. And when they saw the child, they were so immersed in an ocean of love for him that everything that they did and everything that they thought was just centered around this beautiful little child of Nanda.
So, Nirmats are like non-envious that they are performing activities just for Nanda Maharaj can have child. So
he was such a great king, they loved him so much.
One should perform austerity to control one's desires, and one must simultaneously worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus one becomes pious, and as a result one is happy even in material conditions of life. Purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.32. Having seen all these incidents in Brihadvana, Nanda Maharaj became more and more astonished, and he remembered the words spoken to him by Vasudeva in Mathura. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.33.
Now before the omen coming from the sky that the 8th son of Devaki would kill Kamsa, everything was very peaceful in Braj. It was only after Kamsa decided that all of the children should be killed that these atrocious activities were going on. Before that, it was the spiritual world. All the cowherd men and cowherd women, they lived very happily They performed so many pious activities. They took care of the cows nicely. Life was blissful. But then, when Vasudeva brought Krishna, all of the disturbances started coming from Mathura to Braj. And Nanda Maharaj was astonished that this little baby, he was only 1 year old now, 3 times now, these demons have been sent by Kamsa to try to kill this child. So fervently he prayed to the Supreme Lord to protect his little son. And not only he, but all of the inhabitants of Vrindavan were praying to the Supreme Lord, worshipping him, performing austerities, just so that Krishna would be protected.
The gopis assembled there spoke among themselves. What sort of austerities and penances we must have undergone in our previous lives? We must have worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, offered different kinds of sacrifices, made charities and performed many welfare activities for the public, such as growing banyan trees and excavating wells. As a result of these pious activities, we have got back our child. Even though he was supposed to be dead, now he has come back to enliven his relatives. After observing such wonderful happenings, Nanda Maharaj began to think of words of Vasudeva again and again. Krishna Book, Chapter 7.
Because Devamida had 2 sons, one from his Kshatriya wife named Sura, one from his Vaishya wife named Parjanya. So Parjanya, he had his 5 sons, and Sura also had several sons, and one of them was Vasudeva. So Nanda Maharaj and Vasudeva were practically like brothers through this line of the 2 brothers having sons. So when Nanda Maharaj finally, after many years, got the darshan of Vasudeva, and which one was older? Vasudeva was older? Nanda Maharaj was older. Vasudeva gave him this advice that you must protect this child because there will be disturbances, so go back quickly. So Vasudeva, being a very learned diplomat, he understood what Kamsa was trying to do. But he couldn't tell Nanda Maharaj because Nanda Maharaj yet had not understood, and he never will understand, that Krishna is the son of Vasudeva. Because according to Nanda Maharaj, and according to so many statements in the Shastra, Krishna is Nanda Nandan and Yashoda Nandan. And Nanda loved him as his very own son. So therefore Vasudeva simply hinted to him that you have to watch him. And then later, Gargamuni, he gave the same advice to Nanda Maharaj.
After this incident, when Yashoda once was nursing her child and patting him with great affection, there streamed a profuse supply of milk from her breast. Krishna Book, Chapter 7. One day Mother Yashoda, having taken Krishna up and placed him on her lap, was feeding him milk from her breast with maternal affection. The milk was flowing from her breast, and the child was drinking it.
Now when we read Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we learn that there are 8 sattvic bhavs that appear in the body, such as tears, standing of the hair on end, trembling, etc. 8. But in Vatsalya bhav, there are 9 sattvic bhavs. And the 9th bhav is milk flowing from the breast. Because when the mother sees her child, automatically she wants to feed that child her breast milk. And that's why it's one of the sattvic bhavs. We can see that also with the cows. The cowherd men, they always bring the calf and place it in front of the mother. The mother begins to lick the calf, and just from that vatsa, because the vatsa is the calf, that's the Sanskrit name for calf. So vatsalya, that vatsalya ras between the mother cow and the calf, from that her milk begins to flow.
When she opened the mouth of the child with her fingers, She suddenly saw the universal manifestation within his mouth. She saw within the mouth of Krishna the whole sky, including the luminaries, stars in all directions, the sun, moon, fire, air, seas, islands, mountains, rivers, forests, and all other movable and immovable entities. Krishna Book, Chapter 7.
Generally, when a baby or a child drinks milk from the mother, when the child's finished, sometimes his mouth is open a little bit, and the mother enjoys seeing inside of the child's mouth little buds of teeth are coming, and in between the buds of teeth there's milk. So it's a very sweet, pleasant vision for the mother. So after Krishna had drunk milk from his mother, she opened up his mouth to look inside of his mouth, but she didn't see the teeth, buds, and the milk. She saw the whole universe in his mouth. So Krishna was just showing Mother Yashoda what type of son she actually has. But she didn't believe that this was coming from him. She thought maybe he got a disease, or maybe another demon's coming, or maybe a demigod is doing this, a special vision. So she actually became fearful when she saw that, because she was thinking, now what's happening to my son?
O King Parikshit, when child Krishna was almost finished drinking his mother's milk, and Mother Yashoda was touching him and looking at his beautiful, brilliantly smiling face, the baby yawned. And Mother Yashoda saw in his mouth the whole sky, the higher planetary system, and the earth, and the luminaries in all directions, the sun, the moon, fire, air, the seas, islands, mountains, rivers, forests, and all kinds of living entities, moving and non-moving. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7, 35, 36.
Now when Mother Yashoda saw this, and she became fearful, she started to pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead to protect her son. And here in the Sanskrit, there's a whole list of what she saw. And at the end of the list comes mountains, rivers, forests, and all kinds of living entities, moving and non-moving. So in that order, because let's say you go to Nepal, at our Nepal temple outside of Kathmandu, if you just take a little walk up the mountain, automatically coming from the mountain are streams. And those streams join together and they form a river that goes down into the valley. So the rivers are called the daughters of the mountains. And from those rivers come the forests. And from the forest, so many living entities are able to reside there. But actually, all over the entire universe, there are living entities. Some living entities are in the air, some in the water, some on the land, but no place is vacant of living entities. Even living entities live in the fire. Nowadays, people think that by sterilizing something, they're killing bacteria. But there are still living entities that can live in very, very hot fire. They find this in the bottom of the ocean where the volcano fire comes up. Even there, they're living entities. So everywhere you go, from the sky down to the bottom of the earth, everywhere, there are living entities. And this is what Mother Yashoda, and it frightened her. She saw this.
By the arrangement of Yoga Maya, Krishna's pastimes with Mother Yashoda were all regarded as ordinary. So here was an opportunity for Krishna to show his mother that the whole universe is situated within him. In his small form, Krishna was kind enough to show his mother the Virat Rupa, the universal form, so that she could enjoy seeing what kind of child she had on her lap. The rivers have been mentioned here as the daughters of mountains. Nagams tad duhitruhu. It is the flowing of the rivers that makes big forests possible. There are living entities everywhere, some of them moving and some of them not moving. No place is vacant. This is a special feature of God's creation. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7, 35, 36 purport.
Oh, sorry.
Now there's several occasions in the Srimad Bhagavatam where Krishna or Krishna's devotees try to convince Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda that their son, Krishna, is the Supreme Lord. But they don't hear any of it. When Uddhava came and tried to pacify them, they couldn't hear it. They thought that it was like thunderbolts in their ears. Because for Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, Krishna is just their little son. When they went to Kurukshetra and saw Krishna there, they saw how he was being worshipped by all the saints and the sages who came there just to take his darshan. They only saw him as a little child and took him on their lap and started to cry, and the milk started to flow in this Vatsalya Ras. So their love was so pure that they couldn't even imagine that their son was actually the Supreme Lord. They only loved him as a little boy. And Krishna, at moments like this, he would try to show Mother Yashoda what a special son she has. But she didn't believe it was coming from him. She thought it was coming from some other place, because Krishna was just her son.
Upon seeing this, Mother Yashoda's heart began to throb, and she murmured within herself, "How wonderful is this?" She could not express anything, but simply closed her eyes. She was absorbed in wonderful thoughts. Krishna Book, Chapter 7. When Mother Yashoda saw the whole universe within the mouth of her child, her heart began to throb, and in astonishment she wanted to close her restless eyes. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.37.
Sometimes we close our eyes when we are afraid, we don't want to see what's coming. So Mother Yashoda, now that Krishna has shown what's inside of his mouth, she just wanted to embrace her son and keep him safely, because she didn't know where this vision had come from. Therefore, Adbhut was there. She was thinking it was very wonderful, but at the same time, she just wanted to love her son as an ordinary child.
Because of her pure maternal love, Mother Yashoda thought that this wonderful child playing so many tricks must have had some disease. She did not appreciate the wonders shown by her child. Rather, she wanted to close her eyes. She was expecting another danger, and therefore her eyes became restless like those of a fawn. This was all the arrangement of Yogamaya. The relationship between Mother Yashoda and Krishna is one of pure maternal love. In that love, Mother Yashoda did not very much appreciate the display of Supreme Personality of Godhead's opulences. Purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.37. At the beginning of this chapter, two extra verses sometimes appear. Evam bahoni karmani gopanam shamsayoshitam nandasya gehe vavrudhe kurvan vishnu janardanaha. In this way, to chastise and kill the demons, child Krishna demonstrated many activities in the house of Nanda Maharaj, and the inhabitants of Braja enjoyed these incidents. Purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.37.
So originally, the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken in only 4 slokas by Krishna to Brahma. And then later, Brahma's son Narada asked him to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam as he heard from Krishna. And Brahma explained the Srimad Bhagavatam in an expanded form to him in 140 slokas. Then later, Vyasadeva, he spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam to Sukadev Goswami. Sukadev Goswami spoke it to Parikshit Maharaj, and Sutta Goswami was present there in the assembly. And then at the Soma sacrifice at Naimisharanya, amongst the sages, he further expanded and expounded upon what he heard from Sukadev Goswami. So this Srimad Bhagavatam is ever expanding. It's eternal. Just like the sun is always present, but in our eyes the sun rises and then the sun sets. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, sometimes it's in very condensed form and sometimes it's in expanded form. So there are some slokas that sometimes appear and sometimes are not there. So now Prabhupada is telling us about 3 slokas, this is the first one, that are sometimes included in the Srimad Bhagavatam and sometimes not.
Evam svavrude Vishnur nandagehe janardanaha kurvan anisham anandam gopalanam sayoshitam. To increase the transcendental pleasure of the Gopas and Gopis, Krishna, the killer of demons, the killer of all demons, was thus raised by his father and mother, Nanda and Yashoda. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.37 purport.
So you see here also, now Krishna and Balaram, they're old enough to walk around. By 1 year old, usually a child can walk. So they're playing together. And Yashoda and Rohini, Nanda Maharaj, and the other inhabitants of Vrindavan, they're enjoying all their childhood pastimes very much in this Brihadvan. So this is before they come to Vrindavan, where all the elderly gopis and gopas are enjoying Krishna's childhood pastimes so much. And even there, in his childhood Leela, he kills so many demons. So this is the way the Lord enjoys. Here in Braj, for him killing demons is just another form of play. And Rohini was sent by Vasudeva because the heinous activities of Kamsa, she was already 3 months pregnant and she wanted to leave Mathura. So Vasudeva put her on a horse and sent her to Braj secretly. And when she reached Braj, she took shelter of Nanda Maharaj. And then in her 7th month of pregnancy, she, by the arrangement of Yogamaya, she lost one child, the child that she was pregnant with from Vasudeva. And then Yogamaya placed within her womb Shankarshan. So these 2 babies grew up together. And all the inhabitants of Braj loved them so much. And they are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in their leelas in the original spiritual world.
Shripad Vijayadhvaja Tirtha also adds another verse after the 3rd verse in this chapter. Vistareneha karunyat sarva papa pranashanam vaktum arhasi dharmadnya dayalustvam prabho. Parishit Maharaj then requested Shukadeva Goswami to continue speaking such narrations about pastimes of Krishna so that king could enjoy from them transcendental bliss. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.37. Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purports of the 10th canto, 7th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam entitled The Killing of Demon Trunavarta.
So this is one of the acharyas in our parampara, Vijayadhvaja Tirtha, and he has a 3rd verse that's included in this particular chapter because Parikshit Maharaj is so enthusiastic to hear more and more. So this was his request to Sukadeva Goswami to please tell me more pastimes to increase my bliss.
Krishna, showing the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even when lying down on the lap of his mother, proves that Supreme Personality of Godhead is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether he is manifested as a child on the lap of his mother or as a charioteer on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The concoction of the impersonalists that one can become God by meditation or by some artificial material activities is herewith declared false. God is always God in any condition or status, and living entities are always the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They can never be equal to the inconceivable supernatural power of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of 7th chapter of Krishna, Salvation of Trunavarta.
So the hearing of Krishna killing the demons, although these pastimes don't occur in the Goloka Vrindavan, these pastimes of demon killing appear here in Gokula Vrindavan. But for those of us who are hearing, it's very important that we appreciate Krishna's killing of the demons. The first demon we heard about, that was Putana, and according to Bhakti-Vinod Thakur, she represented pseudo-gurus, who we think we're getting nectar, but actually they're giving us poison. So we have to be very careful who we hear the Srimad Bhagavatam from. That's why we read Krishna book and Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam. Next demon was Shakatasura. Shakatasura represented bad habits, but both old and new bad habits. And with the kick of Krishna's little 3-month-old foot, he was able to kick out all those bad habits. So these are very important things that a devotee has to remove from their heart. First, hearing from the right source, and second, giving up all of our anarthas, our bad habits. The third demon now that we've just heard about is Trinavarta. And Trinavarta was the personification of false arguments. And Krishna killed him by strangling him at the neck, so he couldn't utter a word and he couldn't even move, and he fell down flat dead. So when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, it's important that we hear submissively, just as Parikshit Maharaj is very, very enthusiastically hearing from Sukadev Goswami. Now we'll go on to chapter 8. Here. I have to do this computer stuff.
Chapter 8, Vision of the Universal Form. Chapter 8, Lord Krishna shows the universal form within his mouth. Chapter 8, Summary. The summary of the 8th chapter is as follows. This chapter describes the ceremony of giving a name to Krishna. It also describes his crawling, his playing with the cows, and his eating earth, and again showing the universal form to his mother. One day Vasudeva sent for Gargamuni, the family priest of the Yadu Vamsha, and thus Gargamuni went to the house of Nanda Maharaj, who received him very well and requested him to give names to Krishna and Balaram.
So there are a lot of beautiful pastimes in this chapter, and the first description is when Vasudeva sends Gargamuni, because both of these children are actually Vasudev's sons. So he sent the family priest, Gargamuni, who was very powerful. He was the greatest astrologer and performed so many austerities. He himself was observing Brahmacharya Vrat, performed so much tapasya, but because he was a family priest, Vasudeva asked him to leave Mathura and go to Braj. Now Nanda Maharaj, of course in those days, there was no way of communication other than people coming and going. So Nanda Maharaj, when he saw Gargamuni, he was so pleased and grateful that Vasudeva had sent him.
Gargamuni, of course, reminded Nanda Maharaj that Kamsa was looking for the son of Devaki and said that if he performed the ceremony very gorgeously, the ceremony would come to the notice of Kamsa, who would then suspect that Krishna was the son of Devaki. Nanda Maharaj therefore requested Gargamuni to perform this ceremony without anyone's knowledge, and Gargamuni did so.
So we'll hear about the details, because Nanda Maharaj, of course, he had 900,000 cows. He had a very big Goshala. So they decided to perform this ceremony inside the Goshala with the cows as the witness. Now, Nanda Maharaj, he was capable. We had already heard about all the ceremonies and the giving in charity, everything. So normally the Namakaran Sanskara, which is what Gargamuni is going to be performing, is performed very, very nicely with a lot of charity given, a lot of people coming to give their blessings to the child. But because of Kamsa, everything had to be done very secretly.
Because Balaram, the son of Rohini, increases the transcendental bliss of others, his name is Rama. And because of his extraordinary strength, he is called Baladev. He attracts the Yadus to follow his instructions, and therefore his name is Sankarshana.
So this is just a summary, and we'll hear more about Balaram and all of his qualities. But we can remember that Balaram, he never met his father and mother, Devaki and Vasudeva. He only knew Nanda Maharaj as his father. And therefore, Krishna and Balaram grew up just like brothers together.
Krishna, the son of Yashoda, previously appeared in many other colors, such as white, red and yellow. And he had now assumed the color black. Because he was sometimes the son of Vasudeva, his name is Vasudeva. According to the various activities and qualities, he has many other names. After thus informing Nanda Maharaj and completing the name-giving ceremony, Gargamuni advised Nanda Maharaj to protect his son very carefully and then departed.
So when baby Krishna appeared, Mother Yashoda, she fell asleep after the exhausting labor of delivering the child. When she woke up and she saw this beautiful child, he looked like a big sapphire. He looked like a blue lotus. He looked like a large tamal leaf. She had never seen such a beautiful child, and she was struck with wonder. And then when the other mothers, the gopis, the elderly gopis, heard that the child had appeared, they all came quickly, and they were all stunned by the beauty of this dark child. So his beauty they had never seen before. And they were complete, just like the chakora birds when they drink from the moon, those raindrops. So just like that, when they looked at Krishna, they were fully satisfied. So Gargamuni, he understood immediately through astrological calculation who this child actually was. He was the son of Vasudeva. He was actually Narayan. And according to the Shastras, he had many different forms, many different names, and he primarily appeared, according to the yugas, in 4 colors. And now he was appearing in the blackish form. But he could only hint these things to Nanda Maharaj, because Nanda Maharaj couldn't understand that this child was actually Narayan.
Shukadeva Goswami next described how the 2 children crawled, walked on their small legs, played with the cows and calves, stole butter and other milk products and broke the butter pots. In this way he described many naughty activities of Krishna and Balaram. The most wonderful of these occurred when Krishna's playmates explained to Mother Yashoda that Krishna was eating earth. Mother Yashoda wanted Krishna to open his mouth so she could see the evidence and then chastise him.
So this is an amazing Leela, another Adbhut Leela, because in this Leela, Mother Yashoda, she bound up Krishna. But at the same time, when Krishna opened up his mouth, she saw within him the unlimited creation. Everything was within him, and she was still able to bind him. So this is the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. He can be bound by the devotee's love, and at the same time, he remains the unlimited Supreme Lord.
Sometimes he assumed the position of a chastising mother, and the next moment she was overwhelmed with maternal love. After describing all this to Maharaj Parikshit, Shukadeva Goswami and at Maharaj Parikshit's request, praised the fortune of Mother Yashoda and Nanda. Nanda and Yashoda were formerly Drona and Dhara. By the order of Brahma, they came to this earth and had the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their son. End of summary of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 8.
So in Gaura Leela, in Krishna Leela, Garga Muni gives the names. And in Gaura Leela, Nilambar Chakravarti, he gives the name of Vishwambar to Gauranga, Nimai Pandit. So these are the two interchangeable personalities. Now, Sukadev Goswami, he's praising Yashoda and Nanda's love and their supreme position as the eternal father and mother of Krishna. Because in the spiritual world, Krishna enjoys Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj as his eternal parents. That's in Braj Leela. There are different sections in the spiritual world. There's also Dwarka, there's also Mathura, but Braj is considered to be the topmost of all of the pastime places of the Supreme Lord. So when Drona and Dara were ordered by Lord Brahma to produce progeny, they performed tapasya for many thousands of years, and finally the Lord, he consented to display his childhood pastimes as their son. So now those pastimes for our benefit are being enacted in Braj, and by the mercy of the Acharyas, we're able to hear these pastimes and also immerse ourselves in the bliss of Krishna's Braj Leela.
After this incident, Vasudeva asked his family priest, Garga Muni, to visit the place of Nanda Maharaj in order to astrologically calculate the future life of Krishna. Garga Muni was a great saintly sage who underwent many austerities and penances and was appointed priest of Yadu dynasty. Krishna Book, chapter 8. Shukadeva Goswami said, O Maharaj Parikshit, the priest of Yadu dynasty, namely Garga Muni, who was highly elevated in austerity and penance, was then inspired by Vasudeva to go see Nanda Maharaj at his home. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.1.
So Garga Muni had no personal reason to go to Braja, but Vasudeva asked him to go. And Garga Muni, being such a highly intelligent and learned sage, he could immediately understand Krishna and Balaram's position, and he gave them appropriate names. But he also warned them about the disturbances that Kamsa would be sending, and said that Nanda Maharaj had to protect his sons very carefully. Now, just as sometimes we hear from the Bhagavatam that in the autumn time there are beautiful clouds, but clouds aren't only in the autumn time. In the springtime there are beautiful flowers, but flowers can also appear at other times of the year. So similarly, when Krishna appeared, there were so many wonderful things that occurred. The Ashtami appeared like the full moon, and though it was nighttime, everything was brilliant. And though there was a storm, the Jamuna River became just like a paddy field with just a little bit of water for Vasudeva to walk over. So Garga Muni, he could see astrologically how supreme this little child was, but he wasn't able to tell Nanda Maharaj, nor did Nanda Maharaj want to hear such a thing, because that parental love that Nanda Maharaj shared with Krishna was completely devoid of any Aishwarya Bhav. And therefore Garga Muni simply hinted that you have to protect this child, and that he's as good as Narayan. And then he immediately left, went back to Mathura.
When Garga Muni arrived at the home of Nanda Maharaj was very pleased to see him. He immediately stood up with folded hands and offered respectful obeisances. He received Garga Muni with the feeling of one who is worshipping God or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna Book, chapter 8. When Nanda Maharaj saw Garga Muni present at his home, Nanda was so pleased that he stood up to receive him with folded hands. Although seeing Garga Muni with his eyes, Nanda Maharaj could appreciate that Garga Muni was Adhokshaja, that is, he is not an ordinary person seen by material senses. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.2.
So generally the Grihastas, they're so busy in their family life. They have wife and children that they have to maintain. They have cows, they have land, and they want to spend any extra time they can enjoying the company of their wife and children. So they're completely absorbed in their family life. And they don't even think to go see sages. They think self-realization is for other people, not for them. So when a sage, a great devotee, happens to come to their house, because Nanda Maharaj himself was a great devotee, he immediately recognized that this is as if the Supreme Lord himself is appearing, because Garga Muni was such a pure devotee. So therefore he welcomed him as if he were Adhokshaja.
He offered him a nice sitting place, and when he sat down, Nanda Maharaj offered him a warm reception. Addressing him very politely, he said, "My dear Brahmana, your appearance in the householder's place is only to enlighten." Krishna Book, Chapter 8. When Garga Muni had been properly received as a guest and was very comfortably seated, Nanda Maharaj submitted with gentle and submissive words, "Dear sir, because you are a devotee, you are full in everything, yet my duty is to serve you. Kindly order me. What can I do for you?" Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.3.
So now we're moving through this chapter, and Garga Muni, he's come to the home of Nanda Maharaj, and all the saintly persons, because they have knowledge of the Supreme Lord, what they normally do is, they're called Paramahansa Paribrajakacharya. So there are 4 different types of sannyasis. After one finally gives up the attachment to their home life, first they live some distance from their home. They're called Kutichak, where the wife still brings prasadam for the husband. And then after Kutichak comes Bahudak, when they give up that attachment enough so that they don't take food anymore from their home, and then they start to wander, and they take their prasadam from here and there, Bahudak. They're going to many different places. Finally, they develop enough faith and enough spiritual strength that they can start to travel. And the reason they travel is to seek out persons who are completely enmeshed in material activities and material thoughts, and try to give them spiritual knowledge. So that's the Paribrajakacharya. They're always moving around, like Narada Muni, like Srila Prabhupada. Always moving, trying to enlighten people. And then finally, the topmost stage of sannyas is Paramahansa. Paramahansa means when he sees everyone equally, he sees everyone as a devotee of the Lord. That's the highest stage, when the preaching doesn't go on anymore. So Garga Muni, he was willing to go to the home of a Grihasta just to give them spiritual knowledge about the sanctity of Nanda Maharaj's 2 sons.
We are always engaged in household duties and are forgetting our real duty of self-realization. Your coming to our house is to give us some enlightenment about spiritual life. You have no other purpose to visit householders. Krishna Book, Chapter 8. O my Lord, O great devotee, persons like you move from one place to another, not for their own interests, but for the sake of pure-hearted grihasthas, householders. Otherwise, they have no interest in going from one place to another. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.4.
So this is the duty of one who is in the renounced order of life. They travel around, and on the plea, actually they don't need to beg, because they have full faith in Krishna. They know that Krishna is going to provide for them anyway. But they go to the home of the Grihastas, and they stand at the door, And then the grihastas, they get the opportunity to associate with saintly people that way. They give them some charity, and the saintly person, he gives them some spiritual instruction. So here Nanda Maharaj, he's asking Gargamuni, you please order me, please instruct me. How can I serve you? What can I do? Because he understands Gargamuni, he's taken the trouble to come all the way from Mathura across the Jamuna to visit him at his home.
Actually, a saintly person or a Brahmana has no business visiting householders who are always busy in the matter of dollars and cents. If it is asked, why don't the householders go to a saintly person or a Brahmana for enlightenment? The answer is that householders are very poor-hearted. Generally, householders think that their engagement in family affairs is their prime duty and that self-realization or enlightenment in spiritual knowledge is secondary. Out of compassion only, saintly persons and Brahmanas go to the householders' homes. Krishna book chapter 8.
There's one story that there was a very pure brahmachari who used to chant Hare Krishna, and he lived all alone. He would wander, but every evening he would go to the home of a grihasta and beg some milk. So one day he went to the home and he saw that the woman, her breasts were very big and her stomach was protruding, and he had never seen anything like that before. So just out of curiosity, he asked the woman, what happened to you? Why is your stomach so big? And the woman, naturally she was a little shy to explain to him, but she understood that he was completely innocent. She said, well, I have a child within my womb, and this child is going to be born soon. And my breasts have become so big because they're filling up with milk to feed the baby. So then the young brahmachari, he realized Krishna's arrangement is so perfect. The baby is not even born yet, and already he's arranged for the milk to be in the breast of this mother. So then he threw away his begging pot and he realized that if Krishna can arrange for an unborn baby to have milk, why am I going begging from door to door like this? Then he took complete shelter of Krishna. So generally the grihastas, as mentioned here, not grihastas, we'll call them the householders. They're fully engaged in their family activities. But just to pull them out of that dark well, the saintly persons visit them at their house, ask them for some charity, and then they get to engage in some pious activity by associating with saintly persons.
As factually stated by Nanda Maharaj, Gargamuni, being a devotee, had no needs. Similarly, when Krishna comes, he has no needs, for he is Purna, Atma Rama. Nonetheless, he descends to this material world to protect the devotees and vanquish miscreants. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkratam. Bhagavad-Gita 4.8. This is the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and devotees also have the same mission. One who executes this mission of Para-Upakar, performing welfare activities for people in general, is recognized by Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as being very, very dear to him. Nacha tasman manusheshu kashin me priyakruttama. Bhagavad-Gita 18.69. Purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.4.
So again, we have an example of two different types of welfare activities. One may perform upakar, which is welfare activities, for one's own personal, what they get in return, the fruits of that. Because when you do something good, then you get a good reaction. Or one can do para upakar. Para means others. So para upakar means simply to help the other person advance in spiritual life. You attempt to give them spiritual knowledge. So Krishna, being the Supreme Lord, he has no reason to come to this prison house. He does this completely out of his causeless mercy to show us the ideal human behavior and to give us spiritual knowledge in the form of Bhagavad-Gita and to invite us back to his eternal abode by displaying these absolutely attractive childhood pastimes in Braj. It gives us a desire to enter into these pastimes. So therefore, very carefully we have to study every word, every sentence of what Krishna did while he was here, showing his Prakat Leela. This Prakat Leela is only one fraction of the Aprakat blissful Leela that's going on in Goloka Vrindavan.
Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has advised this Paropakar, and he has especially advised the inhabitants of India. Bharata bhumi te haila manusya janma yara janma sarthaka kari kar paropakara. One who has taken his birth as a human being in the land of India, Bharata Varsha, should make his life successful and work for the benefit of all other people. Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi 9.41. On the whole, the duty of a pure Vaishnava devotee is to act for the welfare of others. Purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.4.
So the duty of a pure Vaishnava devotee is to act for the welfare of others. But not only do the devotees act for the welfare of others, but the Supreme Lord also appears for our welfare. For instance, today is the divine appearance day of Lord Jagannath, Snan Yatra. And Lord Jagannath was the first deity that Srila Prabhupada inaugurated within our ISKCON temples because he's especially merciful to mlechas. In fact, even today, the Brahmins in Puri, Prabhupada explains that they take the Jagannath Mahaprasadam and they mix it with their fish when they eat it. So even today, Lord Jagannath is so merciful because the devotees, by worshipping him, they become purified. Purified to the point where, just like Jagannath, he has that wonderful form. And that form is when he heard his own pastimes. He assumed that form where his arms and his legs went into his body and his eyes became so big, because there's nothing more attractive than these Vrindavan pastimes. Even the Lord himself is attracted to those pastimes, and that's the form of Jagannath.
Nanda Maharaj could understand that Garga Muni had come for this purpose, that his own duty was now to act according to Garga Muni's advice. Thus he said, "Please tell me what is my duty." This should be the attitude of everyone, especially the householder. The Varnashram society is organized into 8 divisions: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmacharya, Gruhastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. Nanda Maharaj represented himself as a Gruhi, a householder. Report to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.4.
Sometimes the Grihastas are afraid to associate with saintly persons because they fear that that saintly person will tell them to give up their family, don't be attached, come live in the ashram, live in the temple, only serve Krishna. But that's not Lord Chaitanya's teachings, not at all. When the Kurma Brahmin wanted to leave home, he said, no, you stay where you are and you chant Hare Krishna, and then anyone who comes in contact with you will be purified. So this is the teaching of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the type of para upakara he did. That whichever of these 8 different types of Varnashram society that we're divided into, we stay where we are, we chant Hare Krishna, and gradually we become purified to the higher and higher stages simply by associating with the devotees and chanting the holy name.
A brahmachari factually has no needs, but Gruhinam, householders, are engaged in sense gratification. As stated in Bhagavad-Gita 2.44, Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya parita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadho na vidhiyate. Everyone has come to this material world for sense gratification, and the position of those who are too attached to sense gratification and who therefore accept a Grihastha ashram is very precarious. Purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.4.
Now, Grihastha ashram, that means you're situated in the home. But that home can also become like a temple and become like Vaikuntha if the husband and the wife cooperate together to worship the Supreme Lord and train their children to become devotees. Now, when Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi had, after 8 children had died, 8 girls had died, finally Vishwarup, they had him as a son, and because he associated with the pure devotees who were coming to Advaitacharya's home regularly, he was hearing from them. He wanted to take sannyas, so he left them. So at an old age, they only had their one son, Nimai, left. Jagannath Mishra then died, and then it was only Sachi Mata and Nimai together. So Sachi asked her son, please, you get married, because then she would have a daughter-in-law to look after her and to assist her. On her request, he married. The first wife died, Lakshmi Priya, out of separation when he went to East Bengal to preach. When he came back, the mother asked him to marry a second time. Just to please her, he married Vishnu Priya. But he had a mission, and that mission was to deliver the entire world with the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in this Kali Yuga. So his mother and his wife, they were left at home, and he also took sannyas. Now, whatever our situation is, we can do the same type of preaching, of course not on the same level that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did, but we can encourage everyone to chant Hare Krishna and set an ideal example of householder life if we're in that ashram, so that people will be inspired to also become devotees and help their children become devotees, and that way the entire community can become like Vaikuntha.
Since everyone in this material world is searching for sense gratification, Grihasthas are required to be trained as Mahat, great Mahatmas. Therefore, Nanda Maharaj specifically used the word Mahad Vichalanam. Garga Muni had no interest to serve by going to Nanda Maharaj, but Nanda Maharaj as a Grihastha was always perfectly ready to receive instructions from a Mahatma to gain the real benefit in life. Thus he was ready to execute Garga Muni's order. Purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.4. Whether you are a householder or a sannyasi, constantly chant Hari Hari. Do not forget this chanting. Whether you are in happy condition or distressful one, just fill your lips with the Hari Naam. You are bound up in the network of Maya and are forced to toil fruitlessly. Now you have obtained full consciousness in the human form of life, so chant the names of Radha Madhava. Your life may end at any moment, and you have not served the Lord of the senses, Rishikesh. Take this advice of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Just once relish the nectar of the holy name.
So this is the advice given by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who himself was a Grihastha. He had so many children. He had 2 wives. So we can take his advice as a successful Grihastha who was able to produce a ray of Vishnu, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and we should relish the nectar of the holy name. So that's it for tonight. Hare Krishna.